Welcome to the Movies to Watch Before You Die podcast. My name is Gab, and I'm here with my cousin and co-host,
Dylan.
And we are here to talk to you about some movies that one of us thinks is a movie to watch before you die. Dylan, tell the people why they're listening to us.
Well, you're listening to us because we have 30 plus episodes of podcasting expertise behind us by this point, and because we both are kind of a big deal in terms of film. You being a former actress, me being a former video editor, who both are educated in this with college degrees, no big deal.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. So we've got the credentials to be talking to you about these movies. Now, the movie that we're talking about today, this cat will not stop rubbing herself on the computer screen, and she's gonna knock it off the bed. Sally, stop. The movie we're talking about today is a movie that actually I had only ever seen twice prior to this viewing. It is a movie that came on TBS one night when my mom and I were alone. My dad was a chef, so he was often gone at night. And it came on TV and we watched it. And I thought to myself, this is one of the best movies I've ever seen. I loved it. And from that time on, I watched it one other time after that. And it just became something that when people would ask me, like, you know, remember when Facebook used to prompt you to like type in all your favorite movies?
Yep.
This one just always came to mind. And watching it again the other night for the first time in, 10 plus years at least, maybe even, I think the movie is exactly 20 years old. I was surprised. So I won't say anything more. The movie that we're talking about today is from 2003. It stars Ben Stiller and Drew Barrymore, and it is called Duplex. Dylan, why don't you tell the people what Duplex is about?
What's this all been about? What am I working toward?
You think you know everything about me, don't you?
I bet you're bottom. I bloody well ought to.
Duplex, without getting too spoiler heavy and very simply, is about Stiller and Barrymore deciding to buy a duplex in Brooklyn and finding out that there is a elderly woman who is their upstairs neighbor and their tenant, because since they are buying the duplex, they will be her landlord. And they are very excited to eventually have her gone so that they can own this duplex outright. But she seems to be the tenant from hell, so to speak, and it's basically how will they deal with it.
Right. Yeah. What does IMDb have to say?
IMDb says a young couple has a chance to move into a gorgeous duplex in the perfect New York neighborhood. All they have to do is bump off the current tenant, a cute little old lady. You want to the tagline?
Yep. Sure.
Okay. Alex and Nancy finally found their dream home, and then they moved in. There's two more, but they're terrible.
Oh, I'm intrigued.
The first one is just like a very basic, here's so you don't forget what day it comes out. Moving in September 26th.
Cute. Okay.
It all started with one wrong move.
That's bad.
I also feel like they say it right at the beginning of the movie. An easy tagline would have been, it was too good to be true.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't hate that. Yeah. Very simple premise, right? They buy their dream home. There's a little old lady upstairs. When they meet her for the first time, she's very sick. So they're thinking like she could die any day. And she doesn't. And she just makes their lives miserable. And it's kind of like, how are they going to get her out? Let's talk a little bit about kind of the plot, because my assumption is a lot of people haven't seen this movie. It doesn't seem to have been like a big blockbuster.
It definitely was not. It seems almost no cultural resonance. I think my family might have rented it from like Hollywood Video or Blockbuster one time.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if I'd asked my brother, I think he saw this movie and I never did. But
Okay,
I remember like the
interesting.
box art for it.
Yeah. Essentially in this movie, Harvey Fierstein, who I love, plays the real estate agent who helps them buy this duplex. And he's basically like, the tenant is the sweetest little old lady. She's great. She's very sick. And so they are not able to see her apartment when they are buying the duplex. She's sick. She doesn't want them to come in. So they end up kind of trusting their gut. They buy it without having seen the upstairs. They move in and havoc ensues, right? She is extremely loud at night. She's got the TV blasting. She's got water damage. There's just like a lot of things that go on. She's asking them for favors all the time. What else?
Those are the main things. Like, I feel like once we get to our opinions, I can point out more of the specific things, but
Okay.
I feel like something I'll point out beforehand is I just have to point out what her age is supposed to be in this movie.
Oh, yeah. There's a very funny bit about it. Go ahead.
She says about her husband, the drink took him in 63, and they had been married for 58 years. This would mean that they were married in 1905. If we're being generous and saying that she was 12 years old when they got married, which seems incredibly unlikely, but say they were two 12-year-olds who got married, I
Yep.
don't know. She would have to be 110 years old at the time of this movie.
Yes. And it's hilarious because she says that and they're both like doing the math in their head. They're like counting on their fingers. It's very funny.
I full on paused the movie when full accountant. I was like, I have to know exactly what this means.
That's so funny. Yeah, there's a lot of humor. It's a very lighthearted, silly little comedy, I would say.
And since you are saying that, should we get to some opinion time?
Let's get to opinion time.
In this critic's opinion,
You know, that's just like your opinion, man.
Well, I have a right to my opinion, and my opinion is you have no right to your opinion.
Well, the first thing I want to say is I actually really like the little intro with the little animated portion and Danny DeVito narrating.
Me too. You know, I mean, you do know because you collect the facts, but he did direct this movie.
I did know that. And honestly, I really like, I don't know. I don't know why. There's just something so likable about Danny DeVito. He has just been around forever, and you never hear a bad word about him. And you know what? I desperately went into this movie wanting to like it. Not saying how I ended up or not. Do you feel like he has any certain style to his direction or no? I feel like that's kind of a tough question because like I've seen a few other movies he's directed, and there are times where it seems like he will and then he doesn't. Like in this movie, at one point towards the beginning, there's this random Dutch angle. And if you don't know what I mean when I say Dutch angle, it's like the camera's on a tilt, not, what's the word? Not parallel to the floor, I guess I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And it sort of reminded me of like the type of shot Sam Raimi would have in, say, an Evil Dead movie, or I think he even did it a few times in his Spider-Man movies. But I was like, oh, is that going to be, sort of what he does throughout this movie to sort of show how uneven the ground is, how shaky this house is, how, hard to trust the setting it is. And it was like, oh no, it's just that one time. So I think it just threw me off.
When
I was
was
just like,
it?
oh, it's within the, it's literally, it's got to be within the first few comments I wrote. So it's probably within the first 15 minutes.
Wow, that's interesting. I don't think I even noticed the Dutch angle in the beginning of this movie. I do not feel like he necessarily, I don't know a bunch of other movies he's directed, in fairness, but just judging on this movie, no, I don't think he has any kind of directing style. Didn't he direct Matilda?
He did. And that was obviously, that's the big one I was going to name, when we get to the facts. I love that movie.
Side note, I've never seen it.
Add it to the list, Gab. God damn it. Are you kidding me?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry. I just haven't seen it.
All right. Well, that's definitely going on the list.
Okay. I knew he directed it, though. Doesn't that count for something?
Yes, but it just makes it all the more upsetting that you haven't seen it.
Yeah. No, I don't think he has any kind of style in his directing. Okay, keep going.
Let me also ask you a question. You saw this movie for the first time, you said, with your mom. Do you remember Do you remember roughly how old you were?
Well, if this movie came out in 2003, I would have been 11.
Mm-hmm.
So if we watched it on TV, it probably would have been around 2004, 2005. So I was probably 12 or 13.
Brilliantly deducted. Now, let me ask you something. Being an adult now who pays rent, who has to deal with a landlord, did you feel differently watching it in that sense?
I felt completely differently watching it now. And here's why. Number one, I was like, first of all, there's no way that duplex in Brooklyn is affordable. That's number one. Number two, there's no way in hell I'm buying something where somebody lives upstairs. Because especially there's a part where, I can understand like, okay, somebody is going to be paying rent. That kind of alleviates a portion of my mortgage. That's okay. I understand. But also, the rent is like quote unquote rent controlled. And so when she pays them rent, she pays them $84. And I'm like, they didn't know going in how much she paid.
That would have been a question you asked. Yeah.
Yeah. And then also I just felt like he's asks to go upstairs to listen to the pipes because she's like, the pipes are going bang, bang, bangity bang. And he goes upstairs and he obviously doesn't know what he's doing. So he hires a plumber, and the plumber comes and charges him a ridiculous amount of money. And then he's like, never mind, I'm just going to do it myself. And I'm like, but this is your home. You own this home. You can't just be going in there and fucking around with pipes. Like, it just, all of it was just very confusing to me.
I also feel like, having lived as a tenant now, that it's really hard for me to side with the landlord, because I literally was like, unless she's doing something straight up awful, like I was like, she's too loud, not her fault, your fault, deal with it. You know what? You should soundproof more, your fault. I literally was like, I don't know, bro. I don't know. Like,
interesting.
Maybe it's just
Well,
having
and
had so
only
many landlords
because-
that suck.
I mean, landlords suck, right? Of course. But my thought is I'm not thinking of him as like, at one point the cop refers to him as a slumlord, which I thought was really funny.
Yeah.
Because it's like he bought this home. You know what I mean? Like it's not that he is, because a lot of times the landlord like doesn't live there, because this is not an apartment building. This is a home. Imagine buying your traditional home, but the upstairs is rented by a little old lady, and you're basically just waiting for her to die so you can have that bedroom for a baby's room.
I mean, living on Long Island, I do know a lot of situations like that where people sort of live with their landlords in like split homes, where it's like, all right, well, we live upstairs, the landlord lives downstairs type of thing.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. I'm very used to the New York City. Like, I live in a building with, 80 apartments or whatever, but
yeah.
And
I
the
find it hard
super
to
lives
imagine,
here, but the landlord doesn't.
Yeah, I find it hard to imagine New York City or Brooklyn though. And I guess maybe it's because it's 20 years ago, but still, it was crazy that they're like buying this place in Brooklyn.
Yeah. Also, a brownstone like that would be millions upon millions upon millions of dollars.
Also, did you find yourself thinking about how old are they supposed to be, Ben Stiller and Drew Barrymore?
No, I didn't, but god damn it, now that you bring it up.
I did look it up because I was like, you would think, just the way it painted them made me think, like, are they supposed to be in their 20s? Like,
yeah,
I don't know. It seemed weird to me. So
33, I'm going to say.
At the time the movie came out, Ben Stiller was 38 years old.
Oh.
Drew Barrymore was 28 years old.
Oh.
So I guess I didn't realize they had that big of an age difference.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably part of why it makes it seem like your brain isn't registering. How old are you guys?
Yeah.
Can I tell you what was the most anxiety-inducing part of this movie for me?
Please.
That fucking laptop. He's a writer and he has to finish a book, and he can't do it because when he's staying at the house, obviously Mrs. Connolly, who is the older tenant, is constantly being a distraction and constantly needs this done, which kind of also made me feel like, I'm like, not her fault, bro. You got to set those boundaries. You're the landlord. Not her fault.
Yeah.
Like, because I was constantly
tries
trying to side with the tenant.
He tries to set the boundaries. He's like, Mrs. Connolly, you have to imagine that I am a lawyer and I'm at the office from 9 to 6. So you can talk to me before 9 and after 6. But
yeah. But she literally immediately after that goes, hey, come with me to the grocery store. Nah, bro. Your landlord doesn't go with you to the grocery store.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen.
Well, she plays the cute little, like, help me cross the street card kind of thing. And he has a hard time saying no to her.
I will say they're at the grocery store and she's like literally, they're at the pharmacy and grocery store and she's like counting individual berries and individual pills. And I was like, oh my God, this has been me with my grandma. Like, I was like, I've watched her count pills. Like,
I thought that too. I was like, oh God, I know a little old lady like this.
But what was I saying? The laptop. So he urgently has to finish this book that he is writing. And he finishes it and they come back home, and I was waiting for something to happen. He literally ends up writing it at a bar because Starbucks is full, which, whatever. He and Nancy come home and Mrs. Connolly asks for something, and Nancy goes in, and I'm like, just give her the laptop. She's going into your home. And the moment you watch him walk upstairs with that laptop, it is that Chekhov's laptop of like, I know something's about to happen to this laptop, goddammit.
Yeah.
And like, I was just waiting for it to happen. And by the time you see the laptop go into the fireplace, I'm like, no. Yeah. And then by the time you see him run out with the laptop, like, oh, I can still salvage this. And he drops it in the street. I was like, it doesn't matter what happens now. But I will still say, as somebody who has so much on the laptop that they deeply care about, like, I can only dread and imagine if something happened to my laptop like that. So I will say that really hurt my heart.
Yeah. What's funny is I thought to myself, nowadays, and I think I literally said the word nowadays, everything that he needed would be saved to the cloud. Like that novel would have been written on Google Drive. You know what I mean? Not just on the hard drive that can be crushed by a car.
I don't know, Gab. Like, I'll tell you this. If something happens to my laptop tomorrow, if somebody comes and destroys my laptop with a hammer, our podcast is gone. Like, the episodes that we've made are not gone, but like, there's no cloud sharing that I have that saved on. He's probably just had a Word doc he's been writing it on.
Right. But I'm just saying, if you were a novelist and you were writing something, and you wouldn't just write it on a hard drive and like print it out anymore. You'd send the document via Google Drive to your editor.
Maybe you would.
Every
yeah.
article I
could
write is on Google Drive.
Yeah. There's also
That's
two
all.
moments that full on jump scared me.
Really?
Yes. When they are first upstairs, and he says like, "Hey," with the harpoon gun, and it fucking fires. Like, maybe I've just watched too many scary movies lately because I was like, he's about to murder his wife. Like, I was like, oh my God. Like, I don't know why. It got me hard. Like, I jumped in my seat.
That's funny.
The other time is when they sort of trade places at one point, and it goes from Alex being the one who was at home dealing with Mrs. Connolly to Nancy is now the one at home dealing with Mrs. Connolly. And she's realizing just how bad Alex has had it those past few days. And she gets called by Mrs. Connolly to look in the dumbwaiter, and it turns out that her parrot, Little Dicky, which feels much funnier now knowing the rapper Little Dicky, but
yeah,
is in the dumbwaiter, and she says that, and then like the camera immediately cuts to just a full-on jump scare of the parrot coming at the camera with a full squawk. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was meant to be a total jump scare both times, but they felt that way.
Yeah. 100%. I agree. Both of those moments get me too. So good. What else?
Okay. I do have here, this is the first time that I fully feel Mrs. Connolly is in the wrong. And I will say this is probably a while into the movie. At one point, Mrs. Connolly chokes on something. I can't remember what it was she's choking
A
on.
caramel chocolate.
Yes.
They bring her a box of chocolates.
Yes. And she's choking on the chocolate. And so they go to give mouth to mouth, and they're doing CPR. And in the moment she wakes up, all she sees is her lipstick smeared on Alex's face, and Nancy's got her hands on her breasts. Obviously, awkward hijinks. And it's her then talking to a cop, just being like, last thing I remember, I ate some food they gave me, and then I woke up in this situation. And it's like, it does lead to the cop being, calling them slumlords and like perverts or whatever. But it's one of those, it's the first moment where I'm like, okay, Mrs. Connolly, you're a dick. Like, I'm like, that you were going to die and they saved you.
Yeah.
There's also, I can't remember how we get to it. Is it when she's choking? There's some moment where they end up. Yeah, wait, it is that. It's when she's choking. It reminded me of, you've seen There's Something About Mary, right?
No.
Fucking hell, Gab.
I'm sorry. That's why we have this podcast.
One of the best moments of There's Something About Mary is Ben Stiller fighting a dog. I won't say more than that. Obviously, It's a fake dog. It wouldn't be funny if he's beating up a real dog. But it reminded me of it, the way that they are thrashing Mrs. Connolly around. Because when she starts choking, the first thing they do is do the Heimlich. And they're doing the Heimlich. I believe I'm having this right. They do the Heimlich, and she spits out the food, and he just lets her go, and her body just drops. And like he has this look of like, woo, and she just drops to the fucking floor. And I don't know why I really I found that hysterical. And then he is punching her in the chest to do CPR.
Yeah.
And it's just the roughness with which it's done that makes it really funny.
Yes.
Like, this is definitely a very dark comedy.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, 100%. At some point they like buy a gun, and the gun is my favorite. That's another jump scare for me. They buy a gun, and it's on the table, and it's this very dramatic moment of like, oh, I can't believe it's come to this. We're going to have to do this. And Nancy goes, I've never even held a gun before. And she picks it up, and it immediately fires and hits Ben Stiller.
Yeah, it must have been the most hair trigger in the world, because she immediately shoots him.
Yeah. And it's just like, go ahead.
It leads to the same cop who they interact with this entire movie, because there's only one cop in New York, it seems.
That's what Corey said.
Yeah, who thinks that she is abusing him now because of it.
Yeah. But it's just, it's like you see the gun and you're like all prepared for this murder plot, and you're like, oh my God, they're gonna kill her. And then within seconds the gun fires, and they're like, all right, well, now what?
I will say I definitely didn't write down a lot of quotes for this one, but you know which quote I did find really funny? There's so
What?
many times where they have to sneak upstairs, and there's one time where they're sneaking upstairs while she's out, which again, this 110-year-old woman is still actively walking around and going out. So I'm like, obviously that's just a funny bit, but I kept having that in my mind that I'm like, she's supposed to be 110. Like, I was
Yeah.
like, that's too old. Um, it's Alex. He goes, I know she's running errands. That only gives us 12 hours. So like, it's just, the idea of her walking around, it was funny. That one
Yeah.
got me.
It's good. It's good. I like that. Anything else before I jump in?
No, I think the only other comments I have are probably about the ending, which I feel like maybe we'll wait a little bit to talk about.
We'll wait a little bit. Yeah, I definitely want to give people the opportunity to watch this because it is a movie that once you know the ending, watching it kind of you're going to watch it differently because you
Yeah.
already know the ending. So I would definitely recommend if this sounds interesting to you, pause us, watch it, come back. There's something that I love about this time period in film because there are just so many little comedies coming out that are just very similar to how we spoke about Sleepless in Seattle, where it's like, it's just a movie. It's just a story about this one thing. It is not supposed to be commenting on society. It's not commenting on human nature. It's not meant to teach us some valuable lesson. It's just a funny story. You know, it reminds me of like when you're in school and you read like, you know, The Great Gatsby, you read these big novels and there's so much to talk about. And then sometimes you just read a short story and you're like, wow, that was really good. You know, this is just kind of the short story.
Yeah, I can appreciate that it's not an epic by any means.
Right. Yeah, yeah. And it's not meant to like teach you anything. It's just a funny story about these two people who buy a house and the chaos that ensues.
Yes.
And I just love that it's a 90 minutes of fun. And I think it is really great for people that are right around our age and kind of at our position in life where you're ready to start moving up in the world. And, you know, you're thinking about things like where you want to live and, you know, all that kind of stuff and how much money goes into things. And at one point, you know, Nancy is buying all of these things for their home and you know, they're not necessarily like what Alex thinks they want. Like she buys this really expensive stool and he's like, is it a guacamole bowl? And she's like, no, it's a stool. And, you know, just silly things like that.
It wasn't a quote worth writing down, but since you brought it up, she buys the stool and she's like, take a seat. And the stool is tiny. That's why he thinks it's a guacamole dish. And he's sitting in it like he's a preschooler and he goes, what are we, hobbits?
Yes.
And it's only Ben Stiller makes that line work with his mannerisms.
Yeah. It's great. That said, when I finished, I was like, wow, that was really cute. That was a nice way to spend 90 minutes. And then that was it. I didn't think about it all day. We didn't have any deep discussions in our home about anything. It was just a fun 90-minute little quip. And I felt kind of the same way I did about it as I did the first time I watched it, which was like, that was so silly. It was just fun. And I often tend to gravitate toward movies that have these big impacts on my life and things that I really want to discuss. And this was not one of them. This is just a fun little movie.
Which I always go back to. The biggest thing to me is, you know, the movies that leave the greatest impression on me are the movies that I had the most fun watching, not necessarily the movie that left me thinking the most afterwards.
Sure.
Like I said, you know, The Great Gatsby leaves you with, we could have had conversations on classism and on the style for many, many hours.
Yep.
But how much fun do you have watching a movie? You know, that's what's going to be a bigger deal to me. Like, I got to tell you, if we're talking years down the road, I'll still remember Game Night more than I will The Great Gatsby. You know, not that I had to compare the two, but just for me, I have more fun watching it. God, I'm struggling to think, is there stuff I should say before the ending? So I have one thing that I can talk about before the ending. Okay. Eventually they get to such a level of desperation. Obviously spoilers up to this point, I guess I should say. Do we need to say spoilers anymore? You should have figured out that there were spoilers by this point. That's your fault. Yeah. I blame you.
And I do want to preface whatever you're about to say again one more time with, once you know the ending to this movie, it makes watching it a little less fun. So if it sounds good, stop listening, watch the movie, and pick us back up. It's worth it. It's 90 minutes of your life. It's a fun little movie. And if you don't care, keep listening.
Okay, so towards the end of the movie, they are so at the end of their rope that they basically sell off everything they own to get $25,000 to hire a hitman,
Yes.
played by James Remar, who is a great actor, I think. But
What is he from?
he is from Sex and the City. He is from
Who's he in Sex and the City?
he dated oh my god, Kim Cattrall's character for a long time, actually. He is from he actually plays a similar character in The Girl Next Door, because his joke in this is he's a hitman, but his cover is his normal day job as his cover is that he's a porn producer or something like that.
Yeah.
Which in the not very good movie The Girl Next Door, he also plays a porn producer.
That's funny. All right, continue.
He's in The Warriors. He's in a bunch of things. But he plays this hitman that they, sell everything to afford. And he goes up there and, you expect she's a little late, that she's going to be asleep. And instead she's sitting there waiting for him. And she goes, I knew they'd send a pro. And I don't know why I was like, oh, that's pretty funny. And then they're like struggling because she shoots him with a harpoon gun. And so like, she's, she sort of even things out between normal full strength man and a 110-year-old woman. To the point where she says, if you want to dance with me, you gotta buy me a drink first, as they're tussling around. I don't know. It was just the one moment that I wrote, God damn, Mrs. Connolly is hardcore.
Yeah.
And then the dude just leaves with their, he doesn't kill her. He leaves and they already gave him the money. And I was like, you don't give this guy the money first. That's not how this works. Not that I've hired many hitmen, but you don't give the person the money
You've seen
first.
enough movies to know you get half now and half when it's over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nah, they didn't follow the rules. Should we talk about the ending?
Yeah, I think we should get to the ending, which I'll let you explain the ending. But basically, like I'd said, during the struggle with the hitman, the apartment lights on fire. They go upstairs and see her unconscious in the middle of the burning apartment. And what do? Are they going to let her just burn? No. They save her. They save her and little Dickie the parrot and get, the two of them out of the apartment. And then I guess have to pay to repair this fucking apartment and eventually get to the point of selling the apartment. And I'll let you continue to explain the twist.
Yeah. So after all is said and done, you find out that they've sold the apartment to another young couple eagerly awaiting the home of their dreams. They seem to not tell them anything about Mrs. Connolly, who is still living upstairs. All is good. And they just quietly move out. I did say that under no circumstances do they ever let the sellers and the buyers meet. So I thought that was interesting, that they cross paths, but for that reason, right? Like they just don't want anybody exchanging any kind of words or verbal discussion about the home or anything like that. But anyway, they move out and cut to upstairs in the apartment. It's Mrs. Connolly. It's the realtor and the police officer. And you come to find that, what?
The one thing you're skipping over that is like the ultimate twist of the knife, I think, to Alex and Nancy is they go in the apartment one last time to say goodbye to Mrs. Connolly.
Oh, yes.
And the realtor, Harvey Firestein's character, is checking for a pulse and doesn't find any. And
yeah, they think
after
she's
they
asleep.
have just signed the papers that this woman has finally passed away.
Yeah. So they sign the papers. It's all said and done. He's like, oh, she'd be devastated if you didn't come upstairs and say goodbye. So they're like, all right. They go upstairs. He's like, you did save her life. The least you could do is say goodbye. And she's sleeping in the chair. And he's like, oh, she's hard of hearing. Hello, Mrs. Connolly, in his Harvey Firestein voice. And she doesn't wake up. And they're like, oh, she must really be dreaming. And he takes a pulse and he's like, oh my God, she's dead. And so they think she's dead, that they just sold their dream house and the people that bought it now don't have to deal with her and, whatever. Then, thank you, Dylan, cut to Mrs. Connolly upstairs, alive and well, with the realtor and the police officer. Come to find that the realtor is Mrs. Connolly's son, and he is married to the police officer. And this is a scheme, a ruse, so to speak, that they have been pulling for years. And on her mantelpiece are photos of every couple that has lived downstairs and that they have scammed. So it seems as though they own the building. They're selling it to these people, and then they're buying it back for a loss and selling it again to other couples.
Yes, they're just constantly flipping this and making a profit off of it, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. Brilliant. So then you realize like how ridiculous it is and how they were driving her out and everything they did. They had an answer to. It was really great. Let me ask you this. Were you surprised by the ending?
Yes, completely.
Wow. I'm shocked.
I in no way saw that coming.
Yeah, because obviously I had seen it, so I knew. And for me, once you know the ending, it's all very obvious.
Is it? Like, again, I guess I'd have to go back and rewatch, but, we never see any of these characters really interact before that. We see Harvey Fierstein, who is supposed to be her son, interact with her one time. There's not really any clues there, and you never see Harvey Fierstein and the cop, those two characters together ever. So I was just like, whoa! Like, I was so
Yeah.
thrown.
I just think it's more obvious that Mrs. Connolly is behaving in a way because she is not just a pain in the ass. She wants them to be
Yes.
miserable.
No, that would make
becomes
more
very
sense.
obvious. Yeah.
Like on the weekends, how she has, band practice with like the old lady band, I guess.
Yeah. All they're like a horn band. It's all brass instruments, and they're up there playing like polka very poorly, very loudly.
Which I did have an upstairs neighbor with a full band once.
Oh no.
Luckily, they were actually very good. Like we would just hear
nice.
those
Still
upstairs. They were like doing Earth, Wind, and Fire, and we were like, it was at a time in our lives where we stayed up super late anyway, so it's not like we were trying to go to sleep while they were playing.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, they're playing the hits. Okay, whatever. Like
That's
they
fair.
were playing good shit. It was fine.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's really all I have to say. Let's get to some facts, maybe.
Let's get to some facts.
I want the truth.
Face the facts, dukes.
Facts have no place with an organized religion.
So, Gab, I gotta tell you, there are definitely not a lot of facts for this movie. It seems like the movie that time forgot. Let me start with our ratings. IMDb gives this a 5.9 out of 10.
Huh.
On the Rotten Tomatoes tomato meter, it has 35%, an average rating of 5 out of 10, 39 fresh reviews, 73 rotten.
So it's 5 out of 10, but 39%.
35%.
Well, okay. My comment still stands.
Well, the 35% is the percentage of reviews which rated it fresh. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I see. Yes. Okay. Sorry. Got it.
The audience, I'm sure, who can explain this better for us? Scotty. Scotty's my Rotten Tomato expert.
Yeah. Explain this to us one more time. We're slow.
The audience score is 40% with an average score of 3 out of 5. So let's get to some box office numbers. The budget was $40 million estimated. It had a total worldwide box office gross of $19.3 million.
Wow.
So that's a pretty big dud.
Let me just say, I rented this on Amazon, and I usually rent my movies when we watch them.
Mhm.
And usually it's a $2.99 rental. This was $5.99.
Yeah, because they were like, we have to scour the world to find this movie because everyone else had forgotten about it. They were like,
I
are
guess.
you sure?
Oh my God.
I had a hard time finding it too.
I'm not going to eat this week. Unless some one of you Venmos me $5.99, in which case I'll recoup my losses.
Well, we'll see. It's not going to be me. It was directed by Danny DeVito, who also directed Matilda, as we said, The War of the Roses, and Throw Mama from the Train. It was written by Larry Doyle, who also wrote 28 episodes of The Simpsons, Looney Tunes Back in Action, and I Love You, Beth Cooper. The movie stars Ben Stiller, who you would know from, Dodgeball, Zoolander, Tropic Thunder, I'm sure a million other things. Gab, have you ever seen Heavyweights?
No.
That's a Ben Stiller movie I might do at some point. Drew Barrymore, who you also know from Scream, The Wedding Singer, and 50 First Dates.
Can I please interject and say, I need to give a hot take here.
Hot take?
I don't like Drew Barrymore.
I sometimes don't like Drew Barrymore either.
Okay.
It depends on the movie.
I just think she's always exactly the same. And like, I think probably when I think of Drew Barrymore, the movie that I like her the most in is The Wedding Singer.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think about 50 First Dates, and then I'm like, oh, but also Duplex, and she's just the same in all of them.
Well, if you think about Ben Stiller and Drew Barrymore's performances in this movie, they are basically just playing, like, if you programmed an AI to say, like, give me your standard Ben Stiller and Drew Barrymore, it would be like exactly them in this movie.
Yeah.
Which isn't to say like that they should have been doing something different, but I'm just saying that I was like, well, this is very much a Ben Stiller and this is very much a Drew Barrymore role,
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. But I'm just saying, like, generally, as a person, awesome. As an actress, not for me.
Fair enough. Finally, Eileen Essel as Mrs. Connolly, who made her screen debut at 80 years old, and you may know from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Finding Neverland, and The Producers.
Yeah, she became a success late in life, and wow, does she dazzle in this role.
Yeah, God bless her. She passed away in 2015 at the age of 93. But she had quite a few roles on her IMDb that I was like, wow, you know what? It's pretty shocking to see this 80-year-old woman just start film acting.
Yeah. And she really does a great job.
She almost made it to the real 110.
Yeah, so close.
As far as awards, Drew Barrymore was nominated for a Razzie for Worst Actress for this and Charlie's Angels Full Throttle, because I guess they'll just nominate you for multiple movies in the same year. Do you want to know what she lost to?
Yeah.
She was just up against too strong a bad role. Jennifer Lopez in Gigli.
Oh yeah, I mean that was like, I've never seen that, but that was like a classic bomb.
Iconically bad, yes.
Yeah. Have you seen it?
I have not. I've just heard how bad.
Maybe we should do an episode on that one day.
Movies to die before you watch, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be
So,
fun.
the critics consensus, it was funnier when it was called Throw Mama from the Train. I also feel like it's a little similar to The Money Pit, which I feel like I saw one or two people say, but that might have been in one of my reviews that I have here. So let's get to those. Frank Switek, one guy's opinion. A one-joke farce so sour that it's more likely to cause an unsettled stomach than belly laughs. Brian Webster from the Apollo Guide. Eileen Essel is the real find here, as she manages to play the sweetest but most overbearing old woman you can imagine. Dan DeClerico.
They've obviously never met your grandmother.
No comment. Dan DeClerico from Box Office Magazine. Duplex has enough to keep you seated for its manageable 90 minutes, but then chances are you'll be ready to move out. John Anderson from Newsday. Duplex confirms the suspicion among many of us that today's mainstream movies are simply vehicles for selling other things. In this case, the cause of New York City landlords. Which I'm like, that's very forward thinking of this dude. This dude is very progressive and being like, nah, bro, fuck the landlords.
Yeah.
Couple more. Christopher Smith from the Bangor Daily News in Maine. A controlled farce that finds its cast mining several big laughs while DeVito, the cynic, deepens the dysfunction with a final surprise twist. John J. Puccio from Movie Metropolis. What this little comedy needed was a little comedy. Kevin Carr from Fat Guys at the Movies. This is the last one. Danny DeVito is one of the most underrated directors of our time.
Okay.
I got a couple facts here, but I do just want to point out the critics were like sharks smelling blood in the water because there was a lot of negativity in there, man.
Yeah.
Two quick facts. When Alex and Mrs. Connolly are having the clap on, clap off war, as Alex puts up the middle finger towards the ceiling, you can see Drew Barrymore's character Nancy put her face into her pillow to keep from laughing.
Funny.
Ben Stiller, there was a quote from him. She's got what she has. She's lived there for years and years. She kind of deserves to have what she has really. I think young people sometimes look at old people. It's an ageism that we're not aware of. My theory is that we're all afraid of getting old. So when we see older people, we're afraid because we know that's where we're all headed. Now that I've watched the movie, because to be honest, I had that quote from before I'd even seen the movie. And I'm like, I guess I don't really think that. I don't know. I don't know what
It's
that
not
has to
that
do
deep.
too much. Yeah. That's all the facts I have. I got to tell you, it was a very difficult fact finding mission for me.
Well, I mean, all right.
But now the short fact segment is over, and we can get to Gab's favorite part of the podcast, the mail.
Mail time.
Mail time? When you control the mail, you control information.
Mom asked me to ask you if there's any mail for us here by mistake.
What?
Not a long one today. We first have a comment from Scotty Cameron.
Shocking.
So, a little bit more on the homies toys.
Oh, here we go.
The reason law enforcement agencies requested that retailers stop carrying the toys was because they had thought they were glorifying gang life and encouraging children to join gangs.
That's
it was
amazing.
the, quote, inner city Latino, unquote, figure specifically that prompted this controversy from law enforcement entities like the LAPD, which we know the LAPD can be trusted to tell us what is wrong and right.
Right.
To which Homies creator David Gonzalez responded to, refuting the notion that the Homies glorified gang life, stressing that the character descriptions gave the figures positive and nice personalities. Now, on to Crazy Bones.
Yes.
It seems that the line is still going, but it's been rebranded a few times. First, it was Go-Go's Crazy Bones, which ended in 1999, and after that, it was rebranded The Things before becoming The New Generation.
Wait a second. So it was Go-Go's Crazy Bones up until 1999. I'm blown away that I can even remember that far back.
It was funny because I feel like once you said the name, I was like, yes, I do remember this, but I wouldn't have ever thought of it before that.
Did you Google a photo of them?
Of Crazy Bones? I didn't need to.
Yeah.
I feel like once you said what they were, like unlocked, I was like, oh yeah, I remember these. And I remember like
Oh,
there was
okay,
some
okay.
that like glowed in the dark too, like a couple
Mm-hmm.
random ones.
Yeah, yeah.
We were so amused by like, it was just before the internet really blew up, and we were just so amused by a glow in the dark Crazy Bone or a hologram playing card. That's all it took.
I honestly remember, like, do you remember the Toys R Us on Hempstead Turnpike? And like, we would have a sleepover, and the activity would be going to Toys R Us and each picking out one toy. And it was like always something really inexpensive, but it just like kept us engaged for an entire weekend.
Oh yeah, that and going to Sunrise Mall and like walking around to like there was like 3 video stores and 4 stores that solely like all they did was sell posters, and that was
Yeah.
enough to keep a business going at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And we were their target demographic.
Sadly, now I go to the mall and I just look around and I'm like, expensive jeans, shitty fast fashion,
Yeah.
other thing I don't care about. Like, there's nothing for me at the
Honestly.
mall anymore.
That's true.
We got one more comment from Scotty. A quick
Okay.
thing on the colleges versus university subject.
Oh boy.
Gab, you are correct in that colleges do offer bachelor's degrees, as you got at Marymount. However, it depends on the type of college. 4-year colleges or liberal arts schools offer bachelor's degrees. I turned into the lifestyles of the rich and famous guy. Meanwhile, community colleges and or junior colleges don't offer them, at least for the most part. In recent years, a growing number of states like California, Colorado, Florida, and Texas have extended bachelor's degrees to community colleges, which just makes the difference between community colleges and liberal arts colleges less significant. It does add another layer to the college-university conundrum. To reiterate, universities offer graduate and undergraduate programs, and colleges only offer undergraduate programs. Universities and most colleges offer bachelor's degrees, while most community colleges don't. Moving on, I have seen Police Squad, but I haven't seen the Naked Gun movies. That's really weird. I don't know anyone who's ever seen that. And no, reverse that.
Yeah.
I find the show Police Squad quite entertaining. Lastly, Sleepless in Seattle. While I haven't seen the film, I must say I do find the premise intriguing by having a rom-com where the leads don't meet until the end. So I'm not much of a rom-com person. I may check it out. I will say Meg Ryan's character does come off as a stalker in that trailer. The trailer's obviously making it seem more that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I do, though. This does remind me, I had to bring something up to you. When we did The Mummy, you gave me, like, I feel like there was like a 1-minute long berating where you were like, remember Raiders of the Lost Ark? Remember that? And then you gave me such shit for being like, it's the same fucking thing. And you're like, why would I like this? And now I feel like I'm like, I just yesterday listened to the Sleepless in Seattle episode. And I feel like we brushed aside so quickly that this and You've Got Mail are the same fucking thing.
Yeah, but here's the difference. You liked You've Got Mail.
Well, you should have liked Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Mummy.
Okay, well, you should have liked Sleepless in Seattle.
It was fine. It was okay.
I'll admit this. I'll admit this on the podcast. I am halfway through the Sleepless in Seattle episode. Usually I listen the weekend when it comes out, like going to and from work. But this weekend we were away for my birthday, so I didn't get to listen. So I listened to like half of it today. And nothing about our discussion about the movie is even really all that exciting to me. Like, I get it, is what I'm trying to say. It's not like the most exciting movie.
Oh, okay. I thought you were just shitting on our podcast in our podcast. I was like, don't do that.
Oh my God. No. Our
like...
podcast is great. Our podcast is my favorite podcast. And honestly, like, I'm not even one of those people that likes the sound of their own voice. Like, I just think we have a great podcast.
I hate the sound of my own voice. I feel very differently when we start an episode with you, like, starting it than when I started. When you started, I'm like, oh, when I started, I'm like, eh.
No.
Okay. Now, shall I get to our one email for the week?
Yes, please.
From Scott Interante, whose last name we have okayed because he has had it said on this podcast too many times already.
Yeah.
Rom-coms where they hate each other. Hey, friends, wanted to piggyback off your discussion of rom-coms from your Sleepless in Seattle, parentheses, not a movie to watch before you die, sorry, Gab, episode. So many rom-coms follow the trope of the two main characters hating each other or having some sort of animosity towards each other, but they wear each other down by the end, and wow, it's been love the whole time. I don't necessarily hate this trope, but it is definitely weirdly toxic. I'm sure they're smarter writing about this, but my gut instinct is that the trope in rom-com films comes from It Happened One Night, which is arguably the first rom-com movie and was gigantically successful, one of only 3 films to win major Oscars, Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Actor, and Actress.
Wow.
But I do think it goes even further back, and the person to blame is Shakespeare. Much Ado About Nothing is the ultimate enemies to lovers rom-com, and I think has had such a long-lasting impact on the rom-com genre in general. That's why it is so great when you get rom-coms like Moonstruck, where the characters do not hate each other. And yes, I will come on the pod to talk about that movie, although as an Oscar-winning film, is it allowed? It is a very interesting thing. Because it did win an Academy Award, I'm like, do we allow it? But because it's an older movie, I'm like, well, maybe it's underseen by people, so maybe then. After you had mentioned you hadn't seen The Goonies, I brought that up to Giselle, and she was like, oh, well, she has to watch that in her spare time. You can't do that on the podcast. I was like, but The Goonies, like...
Well, we could talk about this more offline, but I have an idea for things like that. But anyway, we'll talk about it more offline. You know, get
Intriguing.
excited, listener. Yeah, very intriguing. First of all, Scott, you're one of the smartest people I know. And I love to reiterate that. I have a lot of love for Scott. Smartest people I know. Thank you for listening.
She doesn't know that many people. Ha!
Yeah, good one. I think so. I'm assuming that this comment came from the conversation we had about The Notebook, right? Did we talk about how I haven't finished the episode yet? Did we talk about how I thought it was extremely toxic that
Yes.
The Notebook? Yeah, okay. So, but I do love that point about Much Ado About Nothing. I haven't seen It Happen One Night. Shame on me. Have you seen it?
I have not.
Okay, so well, whatever. But
I blame
Scott's
Shakespeare
the
for most
minority.
things anyway.
That's true.
Yeah.
But I would love to have a list of movies where the two leads do not hate each other, because I think that would make it more interesting. I also love the idea of, Sleepless in Seattle kind of being a writing prompt about the main character, two characters fall in love and don't meet until the end. But anyway.
I mean, I remember having a screenplay class in college, and they would just do like prompts like that. It was like, write a one-page scene where the characters are telling each other they love each other without saying the words "I love you."
Yeah.
And like it's always something silly like that, but it's something to work off of and to challenge yourself. And it's honestly 1,000% what it feels like Sleepless in Seattle started as this random exercise.
Mm-hmm.
It obviously it's a mega hit, so I can't say anything besides that. But I feel like if I was the professor in that class and I read that screenplay, I'd be like, oh wow, you did a really good job on this exercise. Wouldn't want to watch that movie though, but like
Yeah. I get it. I think listening back, I think it just really does hit all of those tropes and cliches, and it just does all of them so much that it's like, all right, we get it,
Yeah, it's also just hard to have a conflict without having those characters hate each other at first.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, Scott, would love to have you on. Let's do Moonstruck. I will schedule that with you once I talk to Dylan.
Have him name the time and the place, but hopefully
Okay.
virtually. But that'd be better for me,
Yeah, same. Oh yeah, 100%.
Okay. I think now that we got through our brief mail, should we get to the verdicts for Sleepless in Seattle?
We've already done the verdicts for Sleepless
Son
in
of a
Seattle.
bitch.
Let's get to the
I could
verdicts
cut
for
this
something
out.
else. No, don't. It's good. What are we
Duplex.
gonna? I was
It's
wondering.
Duplex.
Duplex. Oh boy. All right, here we go.
I already forgot the movie. Let's get to the verdicts.
Do or do not. There is no try.
The guilty will be punished.
Sentence is death.
Being your episode, you're going to go first.
Dylan, I'm glad I'm going first, because I truly believe that if you went first, I would just agree with whatever you said, because I'm going to be honest with you. I watched the movie, it finished. I was like, that's so good. It's such a fun little 90 minutes. And then as that was Monday night, today is Wednesday.
Mhm.
As yesterday went on, I was kind of like, I guess it's not a movie to watch before you die. Like, I guess it's not that great. It's fine. Like, it's funny, but I guess it's not necessarily a movie to watch before you die. So I went into this discussion thinking I was going to say no.
Mhm.
But now we just had a discussion about how fun it is to watch and how silly. And now I'm like, but I do enjoy it. And so part of me thinks that maybe I just love it because I have a memory of watching it with my mom and we both loved it. And, and then I kind of just from there blindly went on to say, oh, I love that movie. I think that while I don't believe it holds up to the standard of some other movies that are just like more well-known and have more notoriety and have more to discuss, I do think it's a fun way to kill 90 minutes. I think it's a little known gem. And I think the ending is a shock every time you or not every time you watch it, the first time you watch it. So I don't think this is my strongest verdict, but I'm gonna stick to my guns and say I think it's a movie to watch before you die. What about you?
I very much respect you for sticking to your guns. and I very much have tried to, not give away my opinion. If not for the twist ending, I would have said that this was terrible.
Wow. Okay.
It is very much, like I said, bland, generic performance from Ben Stiller and Drew Barrymore. Like I said, these could have been robots pretending to be Ben Stiller and Drew Barrymore, just like sort of coasting.
Oh yeah.
There's nothing very like stylistically to it. There's hardly any, laugh out loud moments for me. I think we probably talked about every single one of them, which didn't feel like a lot of them. The ending was the part that made me most like, oh, and still like, it wasn't like a particularly funny ending. It was just quite the twist from this comedy.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, as a comedy, the biggest thing is, did I laugh while watching it? Because this movie could have been shit, but if I laughed a lot, I would have said movie to watch before you die. And I got to tell you, did not laugh a lot.
Yeah, me neither is the thing. And that's why I'm like, maybe it's not a movie to watch before you die, because it's just like, to me, it's like one of those movies that you can kind of put on and then go do something else.
It's a very solid background movie. If you are busy folding laundry and you need something to be on there, sure.
Yeah.
But
all right. So
didn't hit the mark for me, homie. I'm sorry. It's a no for me, dog.
Wow. Can I take it back?
What do you mean, can you take it back?
Like, do I change my mind?
You just said it was a movie to watch before you die?
Yeah,
no, man, because you followed your heart. You let that nostalgia of, having watched it with your mom. There's nothing wrong with that, Gab.
I know, but now I'm like, I don't want my name attached to something that's garbage, because it isn't a great movie. Like, it's not like a life-changing movie. I just think it's kind of good.
You did already say it, though. I'm too lazy to go back and cut out.
To watch before. No, I don't want you to cut it out. I mean, let the listener hear the debate. I really was going to come into this saying it's not a movie to watch before you die. And then I let you actually had a really good performance, because I thought, damn, he really liked this movie. All right, I guess
I
it's
feel
good.
very funny. Yeah, as you were talking about it, I was like, did I talk her into it?
Yeah, I think you did talk me into it. So I'm going to take it back.
It doesn't really matter. It
doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Whatever. Anyway.
We only put in the description the movies that we agreed upon. There's nothing wrong with, if you felt that way, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's it's okay.
It had some charm to it. And if you are a Drew Barrymore, Ben Stiller fan, yeah, you could watch it. It's not going to hurt you. You know what I mean? Like, it's not
a
awful.
Bad movie. Right.
Yeah. It's just not memorable, and there's not really much to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll say that. And I think for me, if I was probably 12 or 13 watching it with my mom, I probably loved it. But now as an adult, it's kind of like, that was okay.
Yeah.
I'll give you the game night was way better. Way better.
Well, yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah.
I was like, we both agreed on that. I would hope so.
Yeah. Well, anyway. All right, Dill. Well, what's coming up next week?
Coming up next week, we have a very special guest. Giselle is coming in with what she thinks is a movie to watch before you die.
Yay.
It's going to be the movie Your Name. And we might have a special guest alongside her. We're going to make sure that we have some time here. But yeah, we're going to do Your Name. If you haven't seen it, I'm not sure what streaming service is on, but it is an anime, which normally is not my, biggest cup of tea. But I have seen this already, so I won't give away my opinion on it. I'll try and find out where you can watch it, though.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Okay, is it in English?
There is an English dub.
This is like there's some Dragon Ball watching in my home. And I just I really don't want to participate in this, but okay.
Watch it with Corey.
Oh, I will.
I will tell you, it is not like Dragon Ball.
Okay.
Okay.
I do like when he watches Dragon Ball, because I fall asleep to it because it's in Japanese. So I'm not listening to the plot. It just lulls me to sleep.
I am surprised you can fall asleep, because I do remember it just being a show filled with screaming.
He puts it low. And also I can sleep through anything. All right. Listen, we do want to know your thoughts. I'm sure not a lot of you are going to have many thoughts on this movie. If you decided to watch it, let us know what you thought. Pedro, I'm pretty much just talking to you. Otherwise, you can send us mail at moviestowatchbeforeyoudie@gmail.com. You can send us a voice note at anchor.fm/movies to watch. You can follow us on Instagram, and you can always send me money.
Thank you so much for listening, and come back next week and hear me, Gab, and Giselle talk about Your Name.
Specifically Your Name, because we think it's dumb and your parents didn't love you. Bye.
That's it. That's the end.
Just, snapping her neck or electrocuting her. Or just beating her to death. Decapitating her, drowning her, just bludgeoning her in a humane way. Dicing her up to little pieces. But asphyxiating her first so she didn't feel anything.